Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. I have a bunch to share with you today. I have 3 finished quilts, 4 English paper piecing blocks, 1 Crochet Cutie, and an update on my preparation for Tour de Fleece. For those of you that are paying close attention, you will notice I have changed my YouTube channel name to Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. It helps reflect better what the content is. But I'll be keeping my Instagram and my Facebook the same, Pioneer Lady at Pithy Ponderings, and my blog will continue to be pithyponderings.com. So that's the big change. There's a couple other changes that have been going on behind the scenes. In fact, the first big change happens to deal with why I have 3 quilts to share with you this week. So, a little backstory, and then I'll show you these quilts. About 15 years ago, I looked into getting a long arm quilting machine. Now, for those of you who are not quilters, a lot of quilters today like to finish their patchwork tops, making them into a quilted sandwich using machine quilting rather than hand quilting like I prefer to do. You can use a domestic machine, your standard home machine, by dropping the feed dogs, the little feet on the bottom, the little grippers on the bottom underneath the foot that move the fabric along. If you drop those, then you can move your fabric, move your quilt around freely, free motion, in order to quilt your quilt. You can also use what's called a long arm, and there's also what they have is a mid arm. So a machine that is designated for quilting. That's its sole purpose. There are some machines out there that bridge the gap. They are designed for predominantly quilting. They can sew the patches together, the pieces together, and you can free motion quilt on them. They can also be put on some of the frames that are now out there so that instead of moving the fabric around, you're moving the machine around. It's a wonderful art form. It's not one that I will probably ever be the greatest at, but I have hope for my husband and my son. And my daughter and I laugh. We are very much more the traditionalists when it comes to quilting, but my husband and my son, when they have test-driven long arm machines in the past, they have a rhythm that is just beautiful. So I've actually received the agreement, there's the word, from my husband that he is going to actually help me with a quilt I have coming up. So it'll probably be something I share with you in the next month. Alas, I'm getting ahead of myself. So about 15 years ago, we looked at getting a long arm quilting machine, predominantly for being able to finish projects more quickly than my hand quilting would allow me, and to take some of the strain off of my hands. The decision was made to not get the long arm back at that time. Lots of different considerations. Very glad that I didn't at the time. I'm in much better position now to not only house a larger machine, but also to use it. Because the same week that I decided to take the plunge and get a long arm quilting machine was the same week I also returned to the physical therapist to start working on some ongoing issues I'm having with my back and my shoulder. Issues that have been making it harder for me to do my hand quilting and my spinning, the things that I love, the things that help me unwind. So, long story short, I am now the proud owner of a long arm quilting machine. Technically, mine is a mid arm. It is on the smaller size. So, it works for me really well. I don't need anything any bigger, at least not at this point. And I am using the long arm machine to accomplish two goals. One, work through the stash of donation projects and wall hanging projects and larger projects that I don't feel like need to have hand quilting. So that's number one. That's going to help me overall because it's going to remove some of the stuff cluttering up bins in my house. The second thing is that in using the long arm, you have to have muscle control to control where you're putting your stitches. There are ways to have fully automated. I'm not going down that route, although 15 years ago that really intrigued me. I'm not ready to go down that rabbit hole. More importantly, I kind of like the idea of having a little more control right now of where my stitches go. Because in order to have that control, I have to do something that I really avoid doing, and that is strengthening my core muscles. As the physical therapist has pointed out, that a lot of the issues that I'm having would be diminished. I would have better health improvement if I can get my core muscles in a little better shape. So the long arm quilting machine, believe it or not, is actually working not only as an incentive, but also an exercise, because I have to do it for only certain bouts of time. I have to be very careful with my posture. I have to be controlled in what I'm doing. And all of that is helping with my goal of developing a little better upper body strength. And in the process, hopefully, a couple of the injured areas, the overuse areas, will recover. I'll have improvement. So that's the long story. Now let's see some quilts. So 3 weeks ago, I started, and it's one of the reasons I even went down the rabbit hole of looking at long arm quilting machines. 3 weeks ago, I shared with you a scribble wall hanging. I'll share a picture here again so you can remember which one. And I loved the way it looked. I loved using up the stuff in my stash. I loved the way it looked. So I started a second one. Now, here's my second one. It's a bee and bear theme. It is very, very simple. There is my scribble stitches right there. That is how I'm holding the fabric, the appliques, to the quilt. Yes, there is a heat and bond, a heat webbing, it's a glue webbing that you press onto the back of your applique, and then you can press that onto your quilt top, onto your fabric. So it has been bonded, but then it has also been scribbled. Oh, and I took some time and I did some big quilting stitches to mimic the flight of a bumblebee. So this is one that was done on my domestic sewing machine, on my regular sewing machine. And I enjoyed it. Pushing the quilt around though, and this is something I have known in the couple other times I've tried doing machine quilting in the past, it is a strain on my shoulders a little bit. I don't enjoy being at a sewing machine no matter how much I try to work on the posture, keeping my hands in the right position. It's always a bit of a strain. It's always less joyful than other things that I could be doing. So I did enjoy doing it, but I wouldn't want to do anything bigger than this another small wall hanging. But I had some more of this fabric ready to do. I had one that was perfect for the sewing room. And so I'll show a big picture here. So with this one, it is all sewing room kind of motifs. It is bobbins. It is the tomato pin cushion. Flowers coming out of the bobbin. There's pins coming out of the pin cushions. And this is one that I did the scribble. Bring it in here. I did the scribble, okay, initially, I started doing the scribble with my domestic machine. I had the bottom three or four motifs done when my long arm came. So I decided, all right, let's take it over to the long arm. Let's give it a try. And I went over all of the different pieces now with my long arm. I eventually went back over the initial pieces that I did. So the black, that's the scribble. I went over the initial ones I did with the long arm because I was using a little bit different thread, and it was the stitch width and all that was different. So I went over it all again, had it done. I didn't like the way it looked on the back because I was figuring out the tension. My long arm has a different type of tensioning system than my regular sewing machine. So I had a learning curve. So I didn't like the way the back did. So on this one, and on the one I shared 3 weeks ago, so on this one, if you look at the back, you can see the stitching as I quilted. So as I was scribbling, it was binding together, it was attaching together my quilt sandwich. And it was fine. It looked great on the back. It was not a problem. But when I got done with this one, the back had some areas that I was not pleased with. It's a wall hanging. Would it have been a problem if I'd have just left it? No. But instead, I decided I would put a cream back, and that's why you can kind of see the black backing fabric I initially had. You can see it kind of coming through the muslin. Okay. But then I needed, if I'm going to put a new backing on, I needed to quilt that backing so that the sandwich layer was all combined. It will hang better, it will wash better, it will just last better if my sandwich was fully quilted. So that's why I went through and I did all of this meandering and kind of zigging and zagging and playing around a little bit while I was learning how, in essence, I have a spiral here. I'm actually pretty proud of the spiral, my first spiral. I was practicing using the long arm. There is nothing artistic about this other than the fact that the final product, when hanging on a wall, looks lovely. That's the part. It helps beautify. I don't worry. It's practice. And that was the wonderful thing. It was a way to practice using this new machine. I will get better with my quilting using the long arm machine with time. But I had another wall hanging done. So I practiced with that. And then you have to keep practicing. And because I'm using this as a bit of an exercise and something to help me work on my core strength, I went to my stash of tops that were already put together. This is one, I have a stack of these I want to do. I've designed these up to use up scraps. And I was initially going to tie them for them to be donation quilts. And what I mean by tying it is little yarn or embroidery floss tufts of knots spread around the quilt, holds the quilt sandwich together. But instead I decided to use this as more long arm practice. So I'll show you a little bit here. And now I'll bring a picture up here so you can see. This is a Sunbonnet Sue. These are Sunbonnet Sue and Sam. He is also known as Andy. What was the other name I ran into? So I had Sam and Andy and Bill. Oh yeah, he can also be found as Overall Bill. And so these are ones that I digitized up, and they are designed. The blocks that separate them are all scrap fabrics that somebody had given me. They're done in, here, I'll show you this. They're done in what I call a scrap-a-palooza way of piecing the blocks together. Other people, I've seen them recently call them brick wall type block. Because I guess if I turn it this way, you can kind of see like a brick wall. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful way of using scraps, and it's a wonderful way of piecing because you don't have corners. You know, you don't have to worry about matching the corners of all those small pieces that you're sewing together. So I decided this was going to be a quilt I was going to practice on. And I did all of the machine quilting, getting better with each block, feeling more comfortable and confident, figuring out how to do the knots and to jog, and using my machine and enjoying it. I have a picture here that shows it to you before it's washed. And then, having used 100% cotton fabric, 100% cotton thread in the quilting, and 80% cotton, 20% polyester batting, or wadding for those of you over across the pond. Having used that combination, I then threw it in the wash and I let it crinkle. So now here's a picture of it crinkled. The thing I was concerned about with machine quilting is a lot of the machine quilting I see is heavily, heavily quilted. And I don't want a stiff quilt. I want a soft, squishy, comfortable quilt. So I was playing around with how far apart the quilting needed to be in order to maintain a soft and squishy. And when this came out of the wash, there is nothing stiff. There is nothing board-like. It is squishable. I love the back of it as much as I love the front of it. It took me a little while when I've been practicing on some remnant fabric, just some practice pieces, figuring out the length of the stitches, the different threads that you can use, and I like the way this turned out. Now, I do have a bonus to show. I said I had 3 quilts, but I actually have another one. This is I do flannel receiving blanket. So this is just a flannel receiving blanket. It's all flannel scraps that are left over from projects I've had or that somebody else has given me. I've sewn them together into a little 9-patch type configuration, little checkerboards, 9 patches. And it's just front fabric and back fabric. But when I use flannel and I piece together, do the patchwork of the flannel, one of the concerns I have is that the seams, flannel likes to ravel. It likes to come undone much more frequently than a good quilting cotton would. The open, more loose weave of the flannel, the softer texture of it, it all can lend itself to having wear along the seams. So putting quilting stitches over the top can help solve the problem of the fraying seams. So this one was done on my embroidery machine. I used an edge-to-edge stitch on my embroidery machine. It was definitely a positive experience, but I didn't get around to finishing this one on the embroidery machine. Instead, while I was playing with the new long arm, I put in some really thick cotton thread, and I tried just some wavy stitches over the top. This has been washed. It has been crinkled. This does have batting. So the difference, you can really see this little receiving blanket here. This is very thin. It's just the 2 layers of flannel. This is the 2 layers of flannel and the quilt batting. It's a fun way to do donation quilts. And I have a huge stack of these flannel squares that need to be turned into donation quilts. And now I have a way to do it faster. Oh, what I wanted to show you though is, so this, you can really see the thread. It's a thicker thread. They're both cotton, but one's a lot thicker than the other. I do like the look of this. I like that you can see the stitches. I like the look of it. However, I only have this in one color, and it is old thread, so it's may or may not hold up the best. So this was a test. We will see. This, on the other hand, I love the way it looks. This is a scrappy, using up scraps project, and it turned out way beyond what I expected. So yes, I've gone over to the dark side, and I will now be doing some machine quilting. Now, with that, before I move on to my English paper piecing blocks and my Crochet Cutie, I do have one more comment I want to make about this concept. So finding panels like this, you can still find panels, you can still find things you could cut out. You can cut out getting fabric that has big flowers on it. There is the technique historically was called broderie perce, P-E-R-S-E, so broderie perce, meaning Persian type embroidery. It's an applique where you would cut out motifs out of, I think they used to be like the brocade fabric, but you would take a fabric that had large motifs like flowers and such, and you'd cut out around that motif, and you would apply it to your quilt and create your own design using these pieces from another fabric. And that technique is very much the same as, well, actually like this one. It's very much the same kind of idea. In this case, all of the pieces are ones that the fabric said, here, cut this out. It had clear defined lines, easy to cut out. But it's not always the easiest to find this. If you wanted to do something like this today, there is a way, I wanted to share with you, there is a way for you to accomplish it, even if you don't have a stash, even if you don't have access to that. Or let's say it's not your style. This isn't your style. Something else is. You can take any clip art that you have, photographs, and you can print them on fabric. This is actually printed on fabric. It has a paper backing so that it goes through my printer, the standard inkjet printer. It goes through the printer really well. The kind I've had forever, I've had this packaging forever to share. This is one of them that you can find. There's a number of different brands. This one's by Jacquard. There's a number of different brands now for printable fabric. In fact, the whole concept of printable fabric or print-on-demand fabric is really hugely trending right now. You can find, in the United States, there are quite a number of print-on-demand fabric companies out there. And I believe there are also some in the UK, because I was watching one of the big fabric shows, and they were showing something of that nature. So print on demand, you can have large pieces of fabric printed, or you can do it yourself if you're just looking for small motifs that you then scribble on to your fabric. So you would take this, and the easiest thing to do is, while it's still in the full sheet like this, is to put a full sheet, to put the heat and bond on the back of it, and then trim out around your edges before then applying it to your quilt top. There are videos on how to use products like heat and bond, and I know it's called something webbing, and I'm drawing a blank, so I apologize, but because heat and bond is a brand name. But there's a ton of this type of thing. It's there we go. Fusible webbing. Yay, the brain came through. Fusible webbing. So what you would do is you would take, print on your fabric, and then peel off. Here we go. Peel the fabric off of its backing paper, which, actually, my EPP friends, that would actually be good EPP paper. Okay, now I would take this and I'd fuse this to the fusible webbing. The fusible webbing has a side that is paper protected so that you can fuse the glue to your fabric, trim out around your shape, then peel off the paper backing from that, and then press it onto your quilt. So if you are into this kind of clip art, you can use that. If you're into steampunk, if you are into, black and white only, certain colors that you prefer over others, you can print your own fabric. You can take photos of something you've already made. You can take your own artwork. You can crop out the background and take that and print onto fabric. It is really quite endless. And if you want to do the scribble, you can scribble. Or if you want to do it by hand after you've bonded it using a lightweight bonding, you can applique this. You don't even have to use the bonding. You could try to trim around and needle turn, very much like the hand applique of the past. You could put a buttonhole stitch over it. You could scribble stitch by hand if you wanted to. You can also use puff paint. You can use extraordinarily dense and heavy fusible web, and as long as you're not washing it and not intending to shove a needle through it, you're fine. So there's a number of things that you can do. You can use puff paint. You can put beads with it. It's just the sky's the limit to make your own personally inspired collection, collage, in a way, a bit of a collage. It's not a collage because nothing's overlapping. Although I have some stuff that we've done in the past where we have done a collage with fabrics and prints. So it is something I really encourage you to do. It can be fun. Whether you have a stash of stuff you're trying to use or whether you want to print something out yourself, it can be so much fun. Now, just while I'm on this printable fabric, I printed out one of the buildings, the main hall of my campus from college years ago. And then after we printed it, okay, through the printer, we took the fabric and we did it, we added ink to a bath of water with, I think there was an oily type thing that we put in to make it so that the ink floated, okay? But basically we made ink prints. Here is, so ink prints, okay? So that is taking a picture of my school and printing it on fabric. And then we did an ink wash over it in essence. But you could take a picture of something like this, even if you don't have the ink on it, a black and white picture, and you can stitch that down. You can hand stitch it, you can machine stitch it. You can have a lot of fun. So I wanted to share those with you because it is in making these that my journey to having a long arm came about. This was not something I had on my radar. This was not something I had budgeted, had planned for, had any intention of doing. But I started working on this project and I had fun. I started working on these wall hangings and I had a lot of fun, and it opened my mind up. It opened me up to machine quilting in a way that I hadn't had an opening to before. It made it less intimidating, and I think it also made it more fit in line with my artistic preferences, because we can pick and choose how we quilt it. We can still choose how densely or how loosely we put the stitches. There is choice that we can still have. We don't have to have it look like someone else's. I love things like Sunbonnet Sue. I like traditional grandma looking things. Grandma's great. And now for I should say, because I like the stuff that my grandmothers, my great-grandmothers gravitated to, not necessarily my audience's grandmas or great-grandmothers. I'm beginning to really have to acknowledge that that I have gone past the half century, and so a lot of the things that people today would say their grandmothers did aren't necessarily the same thing my grandmothers did. So there are my quilts. All right, let's, I think what I'm going to do is, yes, let's go ahead and quickly show you my little, let's go ahead and show you my Crochet Cutie. So this was something I saw in a little reel. It's one of those little wind-up toys where their feet move. Okay. And I just basically crocheted, using some of my hand spun, crocheted a little dude. It's a little mushroom. Put some safety eyes on him, and a little stitched nose, There we go. Come in close. One of the eyes had something weird to it. I didn't notice it until after I put it on. But yeah. But just a little Crochet Cutie. I saw this. There, I don't have a pattern. You just crochet around in a circle until it fits, you know. But found the little feet things. Found the little feet things on Amazon, and yeah, I think I may be making a few of these for Christmas. They're cute. So there's my Crochet Cutie. All right, next. Moving right along now. Let's update on Tour de Fleece. So, because of all of the different things, because I have started physical therapy, because I'm trying to learn how to use my long arm quilting machine, I haven't been able to delve too deeply into my Tour de Fleece preparation. I have, however, decided that I'm going to spin small quantities. I think I said this in my last video. I think I'm going to get either 1 or 2 ounce, probably 2 ounce, because if I do 2 ounce, it's easy to split if I want to split it onto 2 bobbins. But I'm going to probably do a 2 ounce, not quite sure which wool I'm going to pull. There's one that's kind of, I don't know. I can't decide if I want to have a colored wool that's black and white and over dye it, or if I want to do a white wool and have bright colors. Probably the latter. But I do know this. I am going to dye up a rainbow of small 2 ounce quantities of a standard medium to fine weight wool, with the intent of spinning them fine, spinning each color, maybe not one a day, but something of that nature, so that when Tour de Fleece is over, I have a collection of finely spun, not thick craft, because I've done that in the past, but finely spun yarns that I can use in hand embroidery, or couching, or something of that nature. The challenge is going to be to see if I can get a consistent wraps per inch across a month of spinning. So I don't know how many videos I'll be doing. I suspect that the videos will probably be, rather than every other day, every day, it's probably going to be every other day at best. More than once a week, because honestly, I like I like sharing what I'm doing more than once a week. I don't know if they're going to be short, reel types, or if they're going to be 20-minute videos. I don't know if I'm going to be spinning in front of the camera or not. I may be doing a combination of all of it. Maybe in honor of 4 years, I will do a combination of all the different things that I've done in the past. But I'm going to focus my spinning fibers on these small hand-dyed rainbow of colors, so that I have a rainbow of maybe not fine embroidery, you know, lace, true lace weight, but maybe what I think the technique is crewel work, C-R-E-W-E-L, I think is how it's spelled. And so I have some yarns that I picked up at Colonial Williamsburg that are spun specifically for this type of embroidery, and I think I'm going to try to mimic that. So that's my goal. That's where I'm going to start doing my preps. The dye baths are coming out this week because I need to get the fibers dyed so I can get them processed. But I also need to get the dyes out because I'm going to be dyeing a large, almost, well, king size, 108 inch wide by 108 inch long piece of fabric that I'm going to turn into a tie-dyed inspired quilt. to practice my long arm quilting on. So I have to get the dies out this week. I will try to post pictures as I'm going. I've been terrible at posting pictures on Instagram. It has been, it's just been a time. So, I'm hoping to post those. Now, to wrap up, I'm going to finish with my 4 English paper piecing blocks. And I have, let's see, they're the last 4 blocks of my 30 block collection that will be turned into a quilt top and hand quilted. It is the Glimmering Star, the Double Tulip, the Rising Sun, and the Prudence Penny. Okay, so the Glimmering Star, and I was working really hard to get all 4 of these done. That's why I didn't do a video last week. Plus, I also knew I had all these changes occurring. So that's why I held off doing a video last week. The Glimmering Star, I wanted to get all of these done so I could share them this week. And I had all but one of them done by last Friday. So this is the Glimmering Star. Yeah, okay. It's one of its names. Then I knew I really wanted to share this because it's Mother's Day coming up. And this one is called the Double Tulip. I think I like the layout that way. So the Double Tulip, and that has some applique as well as the piecing. Then I have the Rising Sun, one of the names this block can go by. I just had to do this one in the red and white combination. Love how that turned out. And then the last block of my collection, I decided to challenge myself with a mariner's compass. This thing, oh my goodness. Let's just say sometimes, and the Double Tulip did the same thing. Let's just say sometimes you have to unpick and resew. I will tell you the technique with this one to make those curved pieces work is do not start at the ends. Start in the middle. Whenever you're putting a curved piece on, that is one of the things, start in the middle. And when you're pinning it, because you're going to take it to the sewing machine, or when you're, a little different with English paper piecing, especially in my case where I was using a thick card that wouldn't bend, a chipboard. But I started stitching from here out, then came back and stitched out, then moved on to the next piece, stitched from the center out, center out. It's one of the tips and tricks when you're doing curved pieces. If you're doing it on the machine and you're pinning it all together, start your pinning from the inside, work your way out, work your way from the middle to the end, and going in between. In the case of hand stitching, you're just working out. But in the case of pinning, I'd pin here and I'd pin here, and then I'd pin going towards the center to get all the fullness of the opposite curves, the way the curves lay to work. If you're wanting to ever look up how to do something like this, look up one of the most common patterns out there that you'll probably find demonstration and tutorials with is called the drunkard's path. If you look up the drunkard's path, you should be able to find some tutorials on how to sew the curves. But this one, because of the fact that you have all of these pieces are very similar to each other, but they can't be necessarily interchanged with each other. And I got them all mixed up. So it is a puzzle. It's making components and then sewing the components together in both of these cases. It was a coincidence that both of them ended up in this with this green fabric. It was a lovely fabric to use, and it was very vintage. So that is the end of my 30 blocks. As soon as I have it pieced together as in a quilt and start quilting on it, I will share that with you then. So, I hope you've enjoyed this unwinding with fiber and fabric. Please feel free to leave a comment below. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I've covered, I'm more than happy to share links with you, answer any questions. Feel free to like this video if you like it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And if you feel like you'd like to share this video with your friends or any of my videos, please do. My audience is small and I cherish each and every one of you, whether you comment in, whether you hit like or not. Thank you so much for joining me on as I unwind with fiber and fabric.